Cherry here, continuing to read The Five Nights at Freddy's, The Silver Eyes, The Other Sister, The Hydra Games 69. Let's begin. John managed to get the car turned around in the constricted space, and Charlie settled against the window. Her eyes half closed already. She watched the trees fly by outside her window and felt herself beginning to doze. The metal object in her pocket was digging into her leg, keeping her awake, and she repositioned it, thinking grimly on the first time she saw one of those things. She was sitting with Sammy in the restaurant before it opened for the day. They were under a window in a dusty beam of light, playing some invented game she could no longer remember. And their father came over, grinning. He had something to show them. He held up the piece of twisted metal and showed them how to open it, then let it snap back in his hand. They both cried out in surprise, then started giggling and clapping their hands. Their father did it again. "I could snap off your nose," he said. And again they laughed, but quickly his face turned serious. "I mean it," he said. "This is a spring lock, and I want you to know how it works because it's dangerous, and I don't ever want you touching these. This is why we never put our hands in the animal costumes. It's very easy to trigger these if you don't know what you're doing, and you could get hurt. It's like touching the stove. Do we ever touch the stove?" They shook their heads with a similarity beyond their years. "Good, because I want you both to grow up with all your noses," he cried, and he swept them up, one in each arm, swinging them around as they laughed. Suddenly there was a loud snap. Charlie jolted out of sleep. "What was that?" "What was what?" John said. The car was off. Charlie looked around. They were back at the motel. Charlie took a moment to reconnect herself, then gave a reconciled smile. "Thanks for driving." "What were you dreaming about?" John said. "You look happy." Charlie shook her head. "I don't remember." Chapter 6. The other car was gone from the lot, and when they went into the room there was a note on Charlie's pillow written in Marla's big, loopy handwriting. "We're meeting for dinner at 6:30, and then going to you-know-where," she had written. "See you too soon. Don't forget about the rest of us. XOXO, Marla." She had drawn a smiley face and a heart above her name. Charlie smiled to herself, folding the note and slapping it into her pocket without showing it to John. "What does it say?" he asked. "We have to meet them at the diner in—" She checked her watch. "An hour." John nodded. He was still standing in the doorway, waiting for something. "What?" Charlie said. "I need to go change," he said, gesturing at the rumpled clothing he was wearing. "Can I take your car?" He held up the keys and jingled them. "Oh yeah, of course. Just come back for me," Charlie said, with a grin. He smiled. "Of course," he added with a wink. When the door closed behind him, Charlie let out a sigh. Alone at last. She was unaccustomed to so much company. She and Aunt Jane moved in their own orbits, meeting gladly from time to time throughout the day, but with the assumption that Charlie could take care of her own needs or would speak up if she could not. Charlie never spoke. She could feed herself, get to school and back, and maintain her high grades and casual friends. What could Aunt Jane do about nightmares? About questions she did not really want the answers to? What could Aunt Jane tell her that was not even more horrific than what she already knew? She was not used to the same presence of other people, and it was a little tiring. She showered quickly and pulled on new clothes, jeans and a black t-shirt. then laid back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. She had a vague sense that her mind should be racing with excitement or horror at the discoveries, going over and over the memories she had awakened, searching for something new. Instead, she just felt blank. She wanted to be alone, to push the memories to the back of her mind where they belonged. After what seemed like only a few short minutes, there was a knock on the door, and Charlie sat up, checking her watch. More time had passed than she realized. It was time to leave. She let John in. "I have to put on my shoes," she said. She looked up at him as she knotted the laces. He had changed. This time into jeans and t-shirts, a contrast with the formal clothes she had gotten used to. His hair was still wet, and there was something fresh and bright about him. She smiled a little. "What?" he said, when he noticed. "Nothing," she said. "You still look dirty," she joked as she pushed past him. They got in the car. This time she drove, and when they reached the diner, Charlie turned off the engine and hesitated, not moving to leave the car. "John," she said, "I don't want to tell anyone about Fredbear's." But he stopped himself. "Yeah," he said, "I think we forgot this is your life and not just some adventure. It's fine. I can keep a secret." "It's all our lives," she said. "We're all there. We can tell them later. I just want to sort some of it out for myself right now." "You got it," he said, and he looked a little pleased. Charlie knew why. It was a secret between them, something she entrusted only to him. When they went inside, everyone was already halfway through dinner. Charlie realized with a sharp pang that she had not eaten all day, and she found herself suddenly starving. The waitress spotted them as they sat down and came over immediately. They talked intermittently. Lamar, Jason, and Marla had gone to a movie, and Carlton and Jessica had played video games at his house. But their conversations was curious, just filling the time as they ate. Charlie barely listened, and she had the feeling that even those who were talking were paying little attention to their own words. There was an agitated energy among the group. They were all just waiting, their minds already focused on Freddy's. "What about you two?" Jessica asked, looking at Charlie and John. "Yeah, what about you two?" Marla echoed with a twinkling in her eye. "We just went for a drive," John said quickly. "Got lost for a while." "I bet you did," Carlton muttered into his burger, grinning slyly even though his mouth was full. After dinner, the group hurried through the mall and toward the restaurant. Hush, Hushed and curious as they passed through the auditorium. Their shoes made only soft sounds on the tile floor, and no one spoke. Shirley had left the big flashlight in the car. They knew their way well enough by now, and the guard had almost seen them the night before. There was no reason to risk drawing extra attention. They came to the end of the hall, and Lamar at the front of the group stopped short. Charlie bumped into Marla before she realized what was happening, and she murmured an apology and then froze. The night guard was blocking the alley behind Freddy's, his arms folded across his chest. He had no flashlight, and so he had been invisible, hidden in the darkness, until they were almost upon him. "I had a feeling you wouldn't leave it alone," he said with an odd, uneven smile. Marla whispered something unpleasant underneath her breath. "I could have you arrested for trespassing," he said. "Saw you here last night, but I couldn't see where you got to. I guess now I know," he added with a smirk. There was something almost immediately off-putting about the man. He was tall and slightly too thin for his uniform, which bagged at the shoulders and wrists, as if he had once been a more robust man but had lost his form somehow to illness or tragedy. His name tag reading Dave hung screwed on his chest. His skin was shallow and his eyes were undercut by heavy lines, adding to the impression of long-standing ill health. "What were you all doing back here anyways?" he demanded. "You kids partying? Drugs? I could have you arrested right now, you know." Charlie and John glanced at each other. And you know what? I'm going to end it here for the suspense, and until next time, talk to you later.